Growing up in a small cave in central Ohio, I didn't really have much of a connection with video games early in my life. I was too busy playing with Legos or watching Ed and Eddie or something. However, I do remember the moment when that changed. That fateful day where my life would be intertwined with video games forever. I was in first grade heading to class on the bus, probably huffing magic markers or something, when suddenly, I noticed a kid the seat over, playing with what I didn't know at the time was a Nintendo DS. As curious as a bear cub could be, I went up to him and asked what he was doing. Yeah, I was a dumb kid. Nonetheless, he replied he was playing Pokémon Diamond. I was infatuated with this game. The monsters, the artwork, the bears, the music, the bears, etc. I'm pretty sure Snorlax is a bear. I'm just gonna consider him a bear. I begged my mom for a copy of Pokémon Pearl, I stole my brother's DS, and the rest was history. Christian, if you're watching, by the way, thank you for the DS. The point of the story is to say, the first true instance of video games in my life was with Pokémon. Now, when this script was written, this is when I was gonna dig into the series and all of its flaws and how they don't trim the fat, how its buff and debuff systems serve no purpose, and yada yada yada. However, something unexpected happened. The newest Pokémon game, Legends Arceus, fixed most of what I had to initially say. The game is good, and I can't remember the last time I said that about a recent Pokémon game. So today we're going to do a 180. We're going to look at the initial problems I had with Pokémon and see how Legends Arceus fixed them. But first, let's define that trimming the fat thing I mentioned earlier. From the game design courses I've taken at my university, my professor has been very adamant about certain design principles. One of these principles he would always call trim the fat. All this means is that you shouldn't add excessive content or mechanics to a game that won't add anything to its message or cohesiveness. Essentially, everything has a purpose within the game's walls. As a simple example, look at the original Super Mario Bros. From the NES. Through its own limitations, it forces the idea to waste nothing. There is no wasted mechanics or design. Everything has a function. Not to state the obvious, but this is a pretty good game to point at for great design. For the longest time, Pokémon failed on this principle. The entire battle system was a microcosm of this, but let's just look at a specific example, the buffs and the debuffs. In sum, none of them mattered in regular play. And yes, I say regular play here on purpose. In my opinion, competitive and regular play are two different things, so we're just gonna make that distinction here. Buffs are easier to show why they didn't really matter. One of the more critical reasons for this is that there are two fundamental mechanics at odds with each other. First, Pokémon is a game series focused on swapping out monsters to match type coverages. Battles are kinetic in that way, and it's almost a necessity to do so, or you face the chance of a bad type matchup. Now, this is in direct odds with how buffs work. They go away once you swap out your Pokémon. The game presents the player with a choice. Do you keep the Pokémon on the field and hope the opponent doesn't take advantage of your stagnation? Or do you swap and ignore the buff? Given that swapping is a necessity, buffs go out the wayside. Even though they have no turn cap, it doesn't outweigh the cost of a type mismatch. As for debuffs, I'm prepared to admit these are used more often, but not by the player. The NPCs seem to use debuffs frequently in-game from my own experience. Take a shot every time Sand Attack was used on you in early game. However, these are also inconsequential. As mentioned before, when you swap out a Pokémon, they lose their buffs. What I neglected to say earlier is that they also lose their debuffs, essentially rendering the debuff useless. Now, there is an exception to this with moves that have ailments like Poison and Burn, but that still leaves a lot of moves that are useless. This is only one example of a larger problem the series had. In my opinion, it was a big problem, but I can see how some of you may not care about that sort of thing. Pokémon is a gateway RPG, and maybe some of you don't care about those deeper RPG staples. But regardless, how did Legends Arceus fix these problems for me? In my previous version of this video, I suggested a couple of ideas for the series moving forward to fix these issues. One of these was an overhaul to the buff-debuff system. Another was to, essentially, throw the kitchen sink out the window and focus on other aspects of Pokémon. And somehow, Game Freak did exactly what I just said. Legends Arceus steps away from the battling and focuses on the exploration and documentation of different Pokémon. While battling is still there, it isn't the focus of the game. Heck, they even lessen the move count of this game. And even with the lessened importance of battles, they still improved them by adding strong and agile style mechanics as well as battle order changes. This helps create a variety of different situations in battle. But most importantly, when changing its focus, Game Freak went back to the initial concept of Pokemon and its motivations. That being a game where you would collect creatures and trade them with your friends. They went back to their roots, which other Switch games did, and pulled their own spin on it. Of course, battles are still there, but it really doesn't hurt the experience because... Number 1, most battles are wild Pokemon, which take less time to defeat and leave more opportunities to use debuffs for capture or easing the challenge of alphas. Number 2, it makes trainer battles more special. One tends to let flaws go more often when they appear less frequently. Not a perfect justification, but one nonetheless. This isn't to say Legends Arceus is a perfect game, or even a perfect Pokemon game. I think it's justified to give credit when credit is due, and even with Game Freak's lows, they turn out a good one here. At the end of the day, they trimmed the fat, and that's incredible to see as a longtime fan. In all honesty, I don't want them to go back to the old formula. I would even go as far as to say most fans are thinking this given the reception of this versus the Gen 4 remakes. This is the point where Game Freak needs to iterate off, exploration and discovery. Here's to hoping that the next game does this, and if not, oh boy. Thank you guys so much for watching and making it to the end of this video. It really helps out the channel. If you like this video and you want to see more like it in the future, why not consider subscribing? There are quite a few fun topics coming up in the near future on this channel, so you definitely don't want to miss those. But until then, Jane.